As you find your seat, let's turn to John chapter 21. I'm going to read to you verse 15 through verse 19. Wally, when you get back there, could you give us a little bit more house lights? When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, "Follow me." Discipline. All sorts of disciplines, right, kids? Eat your broccoli till you can't eat your treats to... And yes, it could be discipline to force feed broccoli down someone's throat. To time out, to you can't hang out with your friends, to good old-fashioned whooping. The Greek for it is called spanking. But there's something that is... All discipline has a goal, and it's to inflict pain. A level of pain. From the whooping to the timeout, to the eating or not eating of something, the pain is meant to teach a lesson. And if you're smart, you'll do what I did, and you'll pretend you learned that lesson very early on. But if your parents are smarter, they know exactly what you're doing. But what is the purpose of discipline? I mean, kids, what's the purpose of discipline? Why discipline you? Well, it's to drive out what's called rebellion. And rebellion at its core is you leading yourself through life. You going astray. We could call it selfishness. I do what I want. And for you to come to know the Lord, for you to come to understand who you are, discipline plays a major role in that. And it's needed. But there's a problem with discipline, and I know this because I once was young. When you're getting whooped, it's hard to believe your parents love you. When you're getting whooped, it's hard to believe that Dad, with the belt in his hand, actually is displaying his love. In fact, you probably think just the opposite. "Dad, you really don't like me. You hate me." You could do what I did. Run away. Just to be met with the whooping once you came back. How it just all comes around. But on your own, you're going to be, you have a desire to lead yourself and to do what you want. And it's natural. Can anyone blame you? Well, you're born with that desire. But we want something so much greater for you. And that is to learn what it means to be under the authority of someone. To learn what it means to follow someone. Follow your parents. And you got to believe they love you. You may not know it in the moment, but down the road, you look back And you'll realize, hopefully you'll realize, there was no greater love that was displayed for you than the discipline that they carried out. He's just making it up. No, it's actually in the Bible. Proverbs 13, verse 24. Adults, parents, whoever spares the rod hates his son. Just feel the weight of that. Whoever spares inflicting pain hates his son. I love my daughter. I hate to discipline her because I hate to see her walk through pain. But something drives me to discipline her. It's a love for something so much more than what I see right in front of me. You see, you know this. You've been learning this for 3 years, and you're going to continue to learn it. This body, it will die. This body is a tool to be used to awaken and bring new life to the real you. And so the one who spares this body is very narrow-sighted. They do not understand life. They spare what will one day die. And so the one who spares the rod hates his son. But he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. Not quick. I mean, there's a lot of reactionary discipline that takes place out of frustration. And parents, I call you and encourage you to work that out in you. Because the reactionary discipline can have the opposite effect. It can drive rebellion into the heart. Be diligent to discipline. Drive out the rebellion for the hope, the goal, and the purpose that they will follow Jesus. If you love them, you will be diligent to discipline them. You're wishing you were in Kid Town right about now, right? I don't blame you. But parents, adults, this is very applicable to you. Blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord, and whom you teach out of your law. How much better is it for you to be disciplined? What is discipline? For you kids, you're really like, man, he really is botching this one. I'm going to go home and get whooped now. No. See, discipline, it's a infliction of a minor punishment to aid a teaching. You could put it this way. It's the consequence of your wrongdoing. Discipline takes on many forms. We'll see one form today that works very well. But blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord, whom you inflict a minor punishment, a consequence, in order to aid a teaching. Psalmist says, before I was afflicted, I went astray. But now I keep your word. And keeps going. I know, O Lord, that your rules are righteous, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. The conversations, they're many. Where does pain and suffering come from? How can a loving God call this pain and suffering? And this will stretch your faith in the Lord to its max. This will push your belief in a sovereign God to the utter edges. Because evil is not a God. Darkness is not a God. The Lord is sovereign, righteous, and in total authority and control. To me, I personally think it's a waste of mental space and my time to try to figure out where my pain came from. Because my faith tells me this: the Lord is in control of all my pain. And it all has a purpose. At its very core, the purpose of my pain is to lead me back to my Father. It is to strengthen my faith. It is to remind me to follow the one who is in control. It could be classified as discipline. Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. So Peter, here we go. We left Peter last week on a beach eating breakfast with Jesus. But before that, we saw a man who in his behavior seemed to be living out of guilt. Okay, so come on, put yourself in Peter's shoes. You may not have to go far to do this. 2.5 weeks earlier, he's standing by a charcoal fire, people around, and Jesus in another room, in whom he appears, he can see Jesus. And a servant girl comes up to him and goes, "Are you with him?" And he denies him. And then someone else comes up. "Are you with that guy?" "No, I'm not." And then a group of people ask him, and he starts calling down curses upon himself. And he runs away weeping. The conviction of what he did was too much. He left Jesus. And if you felt that kind of conviction before, you know what Peter went through. It's more than you can handle. So you run, and you hide, and you bury, in hopes that it will never come up again. And here we are, we're on a beach. How did Peter get to that beach? He swam next to a boat that could have carried him. He jumped out of a boat and swam 100 yards, and the boat followed him. Odd behavior. But on his way swimming to the beach, what does he see? He sees a charcoal fire. Only two places in Scripture a charcoal fire is mentioned: at his denial and on this beach. John is letting you know that the environmental triggers are there to bring life to his guilt. John was there on that beach. He knows his best friend is struggling. He's watching him. He's watching him endure with this knowledge of evil. And the charcoal fire is there to remind him. The only thing missing is that stinking rooster. He would have been good on the fire as a chicken biscuit. But what's on the fire? We got some fish and we got some bread. And John lets you know that Jesus handed him some bread. Another symbolic meaning of the Last Supper. Peter, I did this for you. Remember me. Remember what I did every time you eat of this. And so things seem to be calming down. Peter could be at a point in all of this that this might blow by. But if the Lord loves Peter, he will not let him go undisciplined without learning. Because the knowledge of evil in Peter's mind is crippling him. You see, you were not designed to know evil. You were not designed to know good. What did God? He created man and he said, this is good. And man was born and created in righteousness and perfection. Man had no knowledge of good or evil because he was good. And there was no contrast to him. So therefore, there was no knowledge of good and evil until evil was introduced. And at that point, man now had to reckon, and you have to reckon with, the effects of evil. The effects of the knowledge of evil, that you've done wrong. That you messed up. And some of you maybe this morning, you're carrying the guilt. I messed up. Samuel woke up in the middle of the night. Eli, did you call my name? No, go back to bed. Just go back to bed. I didn't call your name. You're hearing things. Samuel! Eli, did you call my name? No. Go back to bed. You're hearing things. The young boy goes back to bed. Samuel! Eli, did you call my name? And the priest finally got it. God's calling your name. Some of you have carried this guilt for too long. And you wonder why your life is filled with affliction. Samuel, he's calling your name. Peter had to learn something. When they had finished breakfast, verse 15 out of John chapter 21, Jesus said, the first time he called Simon's name, Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? I got to address this. And I hate to break this up, but we're not going to spend time looking at the Greek and the switching of philos to agapos. And the verbs and how the word love is. They're speaking Aramaic. John writes this in Greek. There's too much. It's too ambiguous to come up with answers as to why Peter used the word philos and Jesus used the word agapos, and then Jesus turns to philos. I think there's something there, but we're not spending. This is about all we're spending on it. Let you know that we're not going to spend any time on it. But go home and look at it. Look at the way agape is used in John and philos used in John. I think you might be enlightened to some stuff here. But that's not the point of this. The Good Shepherd is leading Peter back to faith. And he's getting ready to afflict him. Simon, son of John. Oh, we're at breakfast. We're wrapping breakfast up. Who's at the breakfast table? We could say Peter's family. We don't think Peter was married and had kids. We don't know where his mom, pa is. I mean, these are the guys that he lived life with for the past 3 years and probably longer than that. These are the closest men to him. And Peter is sitting there, and Jesus calls him out and places a spotlight on him. He is getting ready to reveal light onto darkness. Notice he never mentions the denial. Discipline, we box it in as a spanking or timeout or this affliction or that affliction. And I would demolish that box. Because Jesus is getting ready to discipline Peter. And it has purpose. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? All of a sudden, Peter is called out in the midst of his friends. And his evil is being exposed. Rebuke is being played out in a very godly and wise and loving way. Why has he got to ask this question? Jesus knows the answer. Look at the first question. Do you love me more than these? Who are the these? It's his friends. It's the disciples. It's those closest to him. It is the very thing that he fell to 2.5 weeks ago. A servant girl. He was more concerned about the opinion of a servant girl than he was his Lord. Are you with them? No, I'm not with him. He loved the servant girl more than he did Jesus in that moment. He loved the crowd more than he did Jesus. Jesus goes straight to the heart of the issue with Peter. Do you love me more than even these, Peter? And what does Peter do? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He deflects. His yes should be a yes, or his no should be a no. But he's in the spotlight. And the pressure is mounted heavily on him. And so he deflects back to Jesus with that pronoun you. Yes, Lord, you. He takes it off himself and he puts it back on Jesus. And you probably can relate. You've been in those moments where you've been exposed. You're dealing with something. and it's too much to bear. So you blame, you shift, you put the spotlight on something else. And that's okay. Because God has His purpose. Because if He didn't deflect, maybe we wouldn't have the 2 next questions. But there's 3 questions here for a purpose. And He said, Peter, feed my lambs. It just seems like an awkward answer to what Peter just said. Unless this. Honey, you forgot the milk again. Why are you getting so mad at me for getting the milk? I didn't mean to forget the milk. You ever had that conversation where something was taken way out of context? I just needed milk because I was going to make you a birthday cake. But why you always getting on me about the milk? You hate me. You must hate me because you honor me about the milk. What if the servant girl asked Peter, are you with him? Because she just didn't know who John or the person was pointing to because it was dark out. Yo, go get that guy. He belongs in here. Are you with him? No. What if the servant girl was seeing Jesus being persecuted and knew Jesus was righteous and wasn't able to compute? What if she had questions? Are you with him? Because I don't understand what's going on. What if the servant girl simply wanted to ask Peter some questions about the situation and the Lord? Well, we don't know. We don't know. But you can kind of feel the weight of it when you read through it in John, that she isn't accusing Peter of anything, but Peter, he defends as if he's being accused. And Jesus says, feed my lambs. She needs you, Peter. She needs you. What if she was the lamb? A lamb that needed the gospel presented to her. Peter, if you love me, feed my lambs. Get back to it. Well, he said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, there is no question here that John is tying this to the denial. There's just no question. I mean, that the structure of this, the structure of the denial, the charcoal fire, that John is showing you very clearly that Jesus is reproving Peter in this moment. He's fixing him. Second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. Get back to work. Said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved. He was afflicted. Word literally means he felt pain, emotional pain. Why? Because he said to him the third time. His grief came from the hand of the Lord, who loves him enough to allow him to be afflicted to learn a lesson. Because now, Peter can learn something. The questions stop and the teaching begins. And when I discipline my daughter, I look for something. That moment where she realizes that what she did was wrong. And in openness, she began to take her the next step. Oftentimes it's not there. Once, twice, 3 times. It takes several times to bring a person to a point of knowing they need something more. And some of you know this. Your affliction, your over and over and over, is not without cause. And it's not without love. The Father is working in you to begin to establish you in faith. He's calling your name, and it's not He's calling and you're missing it. He's calling and He's working this into you. He needs you. He wants you to follow Him and you will. But there comes a point where you sit on the bottom and you eat the rocks of life for a long time to realize, I must follow him. Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? Now see, we're reading into this to an extent, but you have the rest of John to help guide you at this point. What Jesus is doing, the purpose in all of this. Do you love me? He's grieved because Jesus asked a third time, do you love me? So Peter's thinking to himself, maybe Jesus really doesn't know that I love him. But his answer, Lord, you know everything. He deflects again. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. But now, in his affliction, he can be taught. In his grief, he can be taught. And he doesn't know he's being taught. He will probably come to a point later in his life to realize this. That he'll realize that Jesus was working in him in that moment. Peter, he says, I'm sorry to say this is going to happen. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. When you were young, you led yourself astray. 2.5 weeks ago, Peter, you did what you wanted. But I'm telling you, Peter, here's my promise. When you are old, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. It seems odd that Jesus decides to let Peter know the way he's going to die. Unless you understand what the Lord is doing. The Lord is revealing to Peter that Peter will no longer deny him, but at the face, looking the murderers in their eyes, Peter will look at his killers and decide death is better than denial. The discipline, the Lord is showing him his discipline, his reproof, his correcting has purpose and it will hold. Because he will be stretched out one day and crucified at the hands of a loving Father. And Peter will not deny him this time. Jesus is leading him step by step to faith. Finishes by saying this. He said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. He would hold on to the end. No more denials at this point. And after saying this, he said to him, follow me. The goal of discipline, repentance. Peter, it's time to turn away from those whom you loved and just follow me. Very simple. And when the Father leads you in it, it will happen. Peter followed a servant girl. He followed a crowd. He followed what he wanted to do. And Jesus, in this moment, he laid down a command, follow me. And verse 18 shows you, from this point on, Peter follows him to the point of his death. Samuel, what is it, Lord? I'm listening. The affliction of your life has purpose. The loving Father is disciplining. And an appropriate response is, I'm listening. Father, I'm listening. Hebrews 12 speaks on this a little bit further. Consider Jesus, who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. In your struggle against sin, in your struggle against sin, and it is a struggle. Paul said, it's a war that wages on within us. The spirit man and the flesh man. You haven't resisted to the point of shedding your blood. In your struggle against sin, have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. And this is hard to swallow. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves. You discipline your children because you love them. You are disciplined because you are loved. Because he is establishing you. He's turning you into a man or a woman of God. And chastises every son whom he receives. Life is not bound up in this flesh. This body is a tool for God to lead you home. To carry out John 17, to protect you, to guard you. Many would love to dodge pain. And I understand that. I would too. But there's a new purpose to your affliction. Well, it's not new, but maybe this morning you are learning there is purpose to your affliction. And the question is, do you know he loves you in the midst of it? It is for discipline that you have to endure. Because God is treating you as his children, as his sons, as his daughters. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? This is what Peter was going through. The Lord Jesus Christ decided that it was best for Peter to call him out in the midst of his friends and to work it out right there. If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? Or did you... Hold on, did you miss that? Because I have up to this point. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? See, this is what he's fathering in you. Your new life, which is the life of the Spirit. It's not, he's not the father of this sinful flesh. He is the father of your new life. For they disciplined us for a short time, as it seemed best to them. But he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant. I think we all can agree on that. But later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. He's calling your name through your affliction. And for some of you, if you love these more than him, you bet your bottom dollar that he will not withhold the rod from you in order to drive you home. If you love the praise and adoration of men more than the honor and respect that comes from the Lord, he's going to come get you. And he will lead you step by step every way out of the evil. In the midst of it, it will be hard to understand and to know that you have a loving Father. And I encourage you this morning to trust what you have heard from John, from Jesus, and from Hebrews. That if you're going through it even now, The affliction seems to be over and over and over, and it's never ending. Samuel, this time respond. Lord, I'm listening. I'm listening. It would be nice to remove the affliction, to be advised on how to dodge it the next time. I'm telling you from personal experience that it's not what I ultimately want. I don't want to dodge pain. It's been, for me, it has been in the hardest times of my life that I've come to know what true faith is. The advice you need in the moment of your pain and suffering is follow Him. Ask Him, what is He teaching you?